Hi everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Bob Marley, One Love. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. Bob Marley, One Love is a biopic about Bob Marley, about his life, and mostly focuses on the last couple years of his life, I suppose, but there's some flashbacks as well. So, as far as what I liked about the movie, overall the cast was great. Particularly Kingsley Ben-Adir as Bob Marley is awesome. He does a really good job at sort of mimicking sort of his physicality. There's a part in the beginning where he's dancing, he's kind of just spinning around, and I'm like, that's a goofy ass dance. But then they show a clip later, I'm like, oh no, that's pretty much exactly how he danced. Yeah, good job. There you go. He does a really good job with the singing. When he first started singing, I'm almost like, oh, it's a little not perfect, but that's good. That's not perfect because I think he's actually singing. A lot of the biopics lately have been doing a thing where they kind of like mix the actor's voice with the actual singer's voice, and they kind of blend them together. This one may have done a little bit. I'm not sure, but I believe what I read and what I've heard and what it sounded like to me is that he just did it himself. He just did a pretty good impression of Bob Marley singing, which is, hey, that's awesome. Good job. He did a really good job with it. I was really impressed, especially with like Redemption Song and some of the other songs. They came across really well. They started playing, and I'm like, oh, this is just a recording. This is just the actual album. I'm like, no, and then they show him playing it, and I'm like, oh, well, hey, there you go. And he's actually playing guitar. At some point, I'm like, oh, he's not really playing. They're kind of cutting around it and stuff. But no, it looks like there's at least a couple parts where he is playing. Now maybe they dubbed it over with something else or whatever, but like, hey, good job there. I really like the kids who played younger Bob too, Quan Dejai Henrique and Nolan Collington. Lashana Lynch is in here as his wife Rita. She also did a really good job, and the woman who plays her when she's younger, Nia Ashley, also great. But yeah, throughout very good. I know both of them are not Jamaican, but they do have, to me at least, a good Jamaican accent. It sounded believable enough. They had the sort of patois and everything. Yeah, for the most part, I think all the performances were good throughout, and nobody really stood out to me as being bad or anything like that. I really, like I said, I think he did a good job of capturing a lot of Bob's physicality and the way that he moved, the way that he danced and stuff like that. I was really impressed that he does actually play guitar. I think the musical numbers are a highlight throughout. Anytime they hear any of the songs, they hit all the songs, dude. All the big ones that you want to hear, Three Little Birds and One Love. And I don't know if they did Buffalo Soldier, actually, now that I think about it. I think that song came out after he died. But yeah, pretty much all the songs you want to hear, they come up, and you're like, hey, and it's always great when they do too. I really liked when they did Exodus. That was awesome because I actually don't really know that song that well. So when they start jamming and playing it out and everything, I'm like, oh wow, this is great. And I should know that song. It's the name of the album. It's a popular song. It was a number one hit in Jamaica, and I think it charted in the UK and maybe in Europe, but it wasn't really, as far as I know, a hit here in the US. And it's a long song. It's like 7 minutes long. So maybe that's why I don't know it. But yeah, it's a great song, and I really like that. And I like that it exposed some of the lesser known Bob Marley songs. They play one of the early songs, Simmer Down. Really cool song. I really liked it. And I'm like, oh wow, I never knew about that song. So I'm glad I knew it from that. And I really think the movie as doing a job of sort of highlighting Bob's music and exposing you to it and kind of teaching you about more, maybe some of the stuff you didn't know about. I think it does a really good job of that. And I still now I've got a lot of these songs running through my head, and they have been since I saw the movie, 4 days ago, I think. It was really interesting to see some of the songwriting process because you see a bit of different parts. There's one part where he's with the band and they're kind of jamming, and he's like, "No, I don't like it," and then they do something else. He's like, "No, this isn't it." And I'm like, "Is this how they wrote songs?" I'm like, "That's it's cool in a way, but like it kind of made me dislike him a little bit." But then they actually show him like writing songs, playing guitar, and like doing them out. And there's a great scene where he plays Redemption Song, and his wife's like, "When did you write that?" And he's like, "I've been writing that my whole life," which I don't know if he really said that, but still, it's a cool scene. All the stuff about Jamaica, about the two different parties, the Democratic Socialist People's National Party and then the Jamaica Labor Party. I didn't know any of that stuff. So it was just cool to learn about that and to understand what was going on. And I think the movie did a decent enough job of sort of introducing the concept and made me want to know more about it. So I appreciated that. I did appreciate that they mentioned some of the more unsavory things about Bob's life, like his infidelity and the fact that he had multiple children. He had 11 or 13 kids, depending on what, but on the official Bob Marley website, they list 11. There's maybe two others as well. But three of those were born to Rita, and I believe one of those was a child she had before they were married, and one of those was a child she had due to an affair with a soccer player or something. But Bob ended up adopting that child as well. So okay, I don't know. And I love the Clash. The Clash. I didn't expect the Clash to show up, but the Clash shows up. They play White Riot. Great song. Made sense for the thing. And I don't know who's playing the Clash. I should have looked it up. It's probably a real band. But they did a good job. And I'm not sure if they just used a recording or if they recreated it. If they recreated it, it sounded almost perfect. I have a feeling they just used a recording though. But either way, great scene. Didn't expect to see the Clash. I love the Clash. Hey, I'm sitting there going, hey man, I wish they would make a Clash biopic. When's that coming out? As far as what I disliked about the movie, I think Kingsley Ben-Adir did a great job. The singing was awesome, but he doesn't really look like Bob Marley that much, like fit, like in the face. When you see him, like they did a good job with the hair and everything. And if you walked by, you'd say, "Oh, that guy is supposed to look like Bob Marley." Like I get that that guy's playing Bob Marley, but I don't think anyone would think, "Oh my God, is that really Bob Marley?" Which is fine. I understand. He's also a bit taller. I think he's like 6'1.5", 6'2", and Bob Marley was like 5'6". So it's a good 6 inch difference, or more. 8 inch difference. So maybe kind of a minor thing, but it is noticeable, especially if you watch Bob Marley interact with people and you see he's sort of a shorter dude. And this guy is, kind of a taller guy. It's a little weird, but whatever. There is times I think the accents are great throughout, but there were a few times where I had a hard time understanding what they were saying. I think it was partially due to just the accent, the patois, and then the slang too. So like maybe I didn't understand it, but they're like, "Oh, you're going down now," and I'm like, "Okay, you're going down. What does that mean?" Like I don't quite understand. So there's a bit of that where I'm like, "Okay, I feel like maybe I need some." I was able to understand what they were trying to convey and the tone and everything, but yeah, there was definitely a couple lines where they're like, "I'm like, what? Can we hold on a second? Is there captions? Can we rewind this? What did he say?" And the movie's non-linear, which I always complain about non-linear movies. I know sometimes it's done for a reason, something like say Memento, which is backward, but still, I understand why it's done for certain things. It makes sense, and a flashback, one or two flashbacks, I think can be useful storytelling devices. But anytime movies just non-linear just to be non-linear, I feel like it's just like I don't know. The movie was boring, so they were like, "Hey, let's mix it up by changing up the timeline here." And I really feel like there wasn't enough early stuff. I really liked the early stuff when they showed him as a kid, messing around with Peter Tosh and the Wailers and all that stuff, and like trying to go record that song. That was really cool, and I would have really liked to see more of that stuff, more of the stuff with the Wailers, and more of them starting out, how they got started, how he learned to play guitar. They kind of just skipped over all that. The movie is very much what they say paint by numbers, and I think this is very much a good example of a paint by numbers biopic, which I don't know if I never really understood it until I saw the movie Walk Hard, which I think is it's a parody of biopics. And at the time, I remember when it came out, it was right after Johnny Cash died, and I think maybe I was a little like, it's a little insensitive, But then I watched it later, and I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. And once you see that so many biopics follow the exact same formula as that it's hard not to kind of see some biopics as just being a parody, just like that. And then also like Rocket Man came out a couple years ago and did such a cool thing where they didn't do the standard biopic thing. They actually like used the songs to kind of wove them into the story in like an organic way. And I feel like that just ruined biopics for me now because I'm like, well, let's just do that or do cool stuff, interesting, different stuff instead of the same. This is very much like the Steve Jobs biopic or whatever, where it's either they do the thing where they tell their whole life from the beginning to end or from like the beginning of their fame to then they die, or they pick like one spot in their life and then they like do flashbacks to other points in there. And I don't know. I feel like I'd rather just, see stuff from the beginning, or at least more of the stuff from the beginning. I was ready to complain about historical inaccuracies, but there's not too many really. I think they did kind of dramatize the shooting, the assassination attempt, because according to the documentary that came out a couple years ago, someone just like stuck their hand in the door and started firing blindly. Whereas in this, they kind of make it look like he's more a little more professional, I guess. And then Trafalgar Square wasn't pedestrian at the time, but that's a minor kind of thing. Other than that, though, they did a decent enough job of, I think, historical accuracy, as far as I know and as far as I could tell in my quick Google search before this review. I do think they could have done a better job explaining some of the Rastafarianism elements to it. I know a little bit about it, mostly from Sublime, but yeah, I know they worshipped Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who was like still alive at the time. I think he died in like 75 or something. Yeah, and I know they smoke weed and they've got some other stuff going on. I know at some point his wife is wearing like a Jewish like Star of David, and I'm like, okay, wait, is Rastafarianism somehow tied into Judaism or something? Maybe I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so I think they could have explained it because I assume that the reason he didn't want to get his toe amputated or get looked at or worked on earlier was because of his religious beliefs. And I feel like they could have maybe explained that a little bit better in the movie, or if they did, I just kind of missed it. And in the passage of time, this is again maybe just a me thing. I think I want a calendar on the screen at all times to tell me exactly what day it is and what's happening. Because yeah, there's just a little bit where I'm like, okay, he knows he's got the messed up toe, and people are like, hey, you should see a doctor. And he's like, no, no, I'm not. And he does eventually see a doctor, but like how much time had passed between that? And I did look it up, and he was first diagnosed in like 1977. He died in 81. So he had a good 3 or 4 years to do something about it before he did anything. So I don't know. And then the whole Ross Ferdinand thing too is weird because right before he died, he was like baptized in part of like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church or something. So I'm like, okay, I don't really get that. But yeah, I do think, the other main issue I have with the movie is that aside from when they were singing, the songs are great and all the musical performances are awesome, but I was kind of bored at times. And I think I was initially interested in this whole Jamaica thing. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I don't know about this, but I got a little bored with it where I'm like, all right, this just we're spending a lot of time here doing this kind of thing. And I think it's also just the movie is kind of dour, just kind of a sad movie in some ways. And like that's fine, I guess, but I just feel like I would have appreciated more of a celebration of Bob Marley's music. I know he made a lot of different music and he made some religious stuff and he made some serious stuff, but a lot of his music is very uplifting and like bright and kind of, I wish I would have seen a little bit more of that in the movie, I think. Other than that, the movie is directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green. He did King Richard, uh, Monsters and Men. I wrote Minsters, Monsters and Men, and Joe Bell. It was written by a bunch of people, which is always a good sign. It was written by Terence Winter, Frank E. Flowers, Zach Baylin, and Reinaldo Marcus Green. Terence Winter did The Wolf of Wall Street, another biopic. He also worked on Boardwalk Empire. I think he created that show, and The Sopranos. Frankie Flowers did a movie called Haven. I think he also directed that. And Shooting Stars, which I think was about LeBron James. Zach Baylin wrote King Richard and Creed 3, and Reinaldo Marcus Green wrote Monsters and Men, which he also directed. So Rotten Tomatoes on this one is an interesting one where the critics didn't like it as much, 41%, but the audience really loves it, 93%. So a big divide between critics and audience. And I can see why people would do it because definitely I think the movie works as a celebration of Bob Marley's music. And if nothing else, you get to hear his songs. That's always cool. Budget on this one is 70 million. It's made about 75 or 80 million. I've seen different numbers. So far, about 45 to 50 of that was in the United States and Canada. The rest was worldwide. It had a big opening. It made like $14 million on Valentine's Day. I think it was the biggest Valentine's Day opening, maybe ever, or at least in a while. Made more than they expected. I think they expected it to make like 35 or 40 million and ended up making like 50. So good for them. It looks like it's going to make some money based on, what they spent on it. The movie is produced by Ziggy Marley, one of Bob Marley's many kids. I will say there is some stuff here that's just interesting to me because Bob Marley had 11 to 13 kids, and Damien was another kid that was actually pretty famous and had his own kind of career and like worked with Bob, I think. And they kind of just didn't mention that at all. So I'm like, okay, was that just Ziggy being like, hey, no, we don't need to put my brother in there? I do think that other than that, it is a little weird too. I think Kingsley Ben-Adir did a great job, and especially with the singing and everything. But it's a little odd that they didn't just find an actual Jamaican guy to play Bob Marley, Or I think one of his sons or grandsons played him in a movie a couple years ago. I don't know. I didn't see that movie. I don't know what it was like, but just kind of an interesting choice there. I understand he's a popular guy. He was in the Barbie movie, I think, and he was the bad guy from Secret Invasion. So I mean, he's got some credits behind him, but like I don't know, just interesting. Either way, he did a very good job though. So as far as the movie, I liked it. I think it was good. I liked the music. It made me appreciate Bob Marley's music, and I learned a little bit more. And it made me want to learn more about him and more about Jamaica. So I do appreciate that. But it was just a little predictable, a little paint by numbers, and honestly a little boring at times, which is the one thing I can't really forgive for a movie. So I don't know. I think it was good. It was fine, but not great. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think my score is going to be a 7 out of 10. But yeah, if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night. And we'll see you here again next week.